Are you the quantum mechanics?
Yes, we are the Quantum Mechanics, the paranormal podcast for believers, doubters, and everybody in between.
We are indeed. Now, Ben, you've told me already, not feeling tippity-top today. Would it be fair to say you're feeling abominable?
I am feeling slightly abominable. It was Rachel's birthday yesterday, and we embraced it fully with all of the grapes and
others.
And the other things, yes. So I did get an early night in preparation for this, but things are still...
Fuzzy?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm a bit fuzzy around the edges. I've got a bit of a hairy throat, a little bit, Yeti-ish.
A bit Yeti-ish. Well, it's surprising you say that, Ben. It's as if you'd seen what we're doing today.
It's as if I'd read The Idiot's Guide to Segways and had decided to just go straight in and try one.
Well, yes, you are right. Today we are going to look at the Yeti, also known as the Abominable Snowman. I do struggle to say abominable.
Abominable, yes. I feel quite proud when I get it right once, but then if I try it again, my tongue goes all around my teeth.
Yeah, abominable.
And I think it's a bit unfair because he's not. Why is he abominable? He hasn't done anything, has he?
Well, we'll come on to why he's called abominable in a minute.
Oh, all right then.
Now, I wanted to do this topic today, not because I know a lot about the Yeti or I have an obsession with it. In fact, quite the opposite, really. I've always thought about it as the stuff of Scooby-Doo or Tall Tales. I knew little about its folklore, the sightings or encounters, certainly compared to Bigfoot. Bigfoot I seem to know more about than the Yeti.
Oh, are they not the same?
Well, that is a debate that we'll get onto. Some believe they are cousins, some believe they're completely separate. I don't know what you call them.
Different creatures.
Creatures, species, whatever. Yes, let's delve into the snowy and chilly world of the Yeti. And today, just to make it clear, because there are the comparisons with Bigfoot, we're going to focus on the snowmen of the Himalayas. So this is very specific. We're going to look at the folklore, more modern-day encounters and evidence, and get some opinion from a couple of cultural icons.
Okay, cool.
We also have an interesting theory about the elusive beast from our resident zoologist and entomology research scientist, Luke. I called him a cryptozoologist again last week, which he doesn't like, and I'm sorry, Luke. He's not one of those.
He's not one of those,
He's not one of those. Now, Ben, you know I love some random facts.
I do know that.
Shall we start with some random facts about the Yeti's natural habitat, the mountain range known as the Himalayas?
Yeah, I don't know much about the Himalayas apart from it's cold and you get pink salt from there.
There you go, you do. Well, there's two of my facts that have just gone.
Sorry.
Well, it is the highest mountain range. I probably should say above sea level, shouldn't I? 8 of the top 10 highest mountains in the world are in the Himalayas, including the tallest, Mount Everest. The Himalayas stretches 2,400 kilometres, so that's about 1,500 miles, crossing India, Nepal, Bhutan, China and Pakistan. They are home to several species of plants and animals that are considered living fossils, which I hadn't come across that term before.
No.
Basically means they've existed in pretty much the same form for millions of years. So this includes the Himalayan blue poppy, and it also includes the Himalayan tar, a goat-like herbivorous animal. Now, the word Himalaya is said to mean abode of snow in Sanskrit. In terms of wildlife, the region is one of the most biodiverse on the planet. So if you think about these random facts, Ben, a couple of things stood out for me. The idea of living fossils, species that have changed relatively little in millions of years. And if you add to that the range of biodiversity in the Himalayas, gives you an interesting potential narrative for the existence of the Yeti, I think.
Yeah. Because it's so vast and quite impenetrable to normal people, then there's bound to be legends that come out of that.
Yeah. Well, let's start with some local folklore about the Yeti. And the author, Ram Kumar Pandey, who has written a number of books on the subject. Much of the folklore about this intriguing creature comes from the Sherpa people, native to the mountain region of Nepal, particularly in the Salokamba region, where Mount Everest is located. So the folklore from my reading is mainly passed down by storytelling, some artwork, kind of the usual stuff, really. Now, according to the author, Ram Kumar Pandey, the Sherpa described the Yeti as a gigantic biped man-like creature with a conical head, a flat face, a back-turned big toes in its huge foot. Arms and body are covered with coarse, thick hair. The female Yeti, he says, has a pair of large-sized breasts down to their stomach. They cannot run fast due to the long and big pendulous breasts. I don't know how he knows this, but he does. A female Yeti puts their breast over her shoulder when she has to run.
No, they don't.
A male Yeti has long crest hair falling over the eyes, which hampers swiftness while running in the rocky cliffs. I did enjoy reading his book, but it's probably one of those where, you know, when you read these books and they've been translated into English and the translation is a little bit difficult to follow. So I would recommend his Yeti book if you want some kind of core facts, but it's one of those you've really got to work through because the translations.
I'm still in sceptical land about
the breasts.
Throwing your breasts over your shoulder to run.
Yeah, we've all been there.
We've all been clubbing in sirens.
Yeah. He says people fear the Yeti as an animal of evil and as an object of death. Sherpas say that when people see the Yeti, they die. Yeti is a figure of fear. When a child weeps, his parents warn him, saying, "Stop crying, otherwise Yeti will take you." So there is this part of the folklore is that they steal children.
Yeah. That always goes back to it. The boogeyman, the Jenny Green tea, the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeti is a disaster-creating creature, he says. They destroy crops, drink chung, which is a local alcoholic beverage. Sorry to mention alcoholic beverages, Ben. They kill yaks and kidnap children. Yeti does not like the smell of humans, and they can make themselves invisible when some humans approach them. Yeti has spiritual quality and character, so they cannot be seen easily, but they exist in the high Himalayan caves. The Sherpa belief in this creature is widespread. Some say the Yeti is associated with a demon. Other people say that it is an animal. So there's a bit of mixture of stuff going on. He goes on to say that city dwellers' belief about the creature differs from those in the mountains. Generally, city people think the creature is a type of ape or a missing link between primates like chimpanzee and orangutan and humans, and perhaps is a remnant of the Stone Age. So there is this connection with it being a missing link, which other expeditions have tried to look into as well. Certainly the legend of the Yeti, or wild man, goes back a long way. The official poet to the palace of the Tang dynasty in China, that reigned between 340 and 270 years BC, claimed to have seen the creature. The famous Tibetan poet, Mirepa, who died in 1112, wrote poems and songs about the Yeti. A number of them, apparently. Even today, the idea of a wild snowman captures the imagination. In China, in 1994, a $60,000 reward was put up for anyone who could prove the existence of such a creature. So I think this was an official thing by one of the provinces in China.
Oh, right. Okay.
Offered a reward if you could go and find it. So lots of expeditions went out to try and find it. Not sure they were successful.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we'd have heard if they claimed it.
Now, as recently as 2020, the Yeti has caused controversy and divided the Himalayan nation, according to Lamal Pariyar from BBC Nepal. A row of the Yeti has pitted experts against officials, Pariyar writes. And for once, it's not about whether or not the mythical creature actually exists. Instead, it is how the creature looks. This is not right. The government can't just do as it wants, a passerby named Reshma Shestha says, shaking her head in front of the 7-foot-tall statue at the centre of the row. If you didn't tell me, I would not have known that it was a Yeti, they go on to say. So this is about the arrival of the first of more than 100 statues of the Yeti, emblazoned with the words "Visit Nepal," which was supposed to be the start of a year-long celebration of what the small Himalayan nation had to offer to the outside world. So it was a bit of a tourist thing. They made a load of these 7-foot statues of the Yeti.
Right.
So they'll soon be popping up across the country, popular tourist attractions, trade centres, airports, and some of the base camps in the Himalayas, and some of them are travelling further afield to act as a mascot in cities around the world. But the launch of this tourism drive, which aims to bring 2 million tourists to the region, has somewhat overshadowed by the row over the statue's appearance. Ram Kumar Pandey, the author I mentioned earlier, Ben, tells the BBC, in folklore tales, the Yeti has been described as a big monkey-like creature. However, the recent logo depicts it as a sumo wrestler. This is not at all a match with the mythical character that has been described in many folklore tales. What I know about the Yeti is that it is a monkey-like creature which walks around in the snow, he continues. And he's analysing the figure in front of Kesh Mahal in the capital Kathmandu, unconvinced by what has been created. This is brilliant. However, the Yeti Art Commission...
The what now? The Yeti Art Commission?
Sorry, the Yeti Art Committee...
Oh, committee...
which is a subdivision of the Visit Nepal Year Secretariat.
I'm going to have to draw a diagram now. Yeah. Right, okay.
But there is a Yeti Art Committee, just so you know.
Okay.
They're standing by the design of its Yeti, which doesn't come cheap at a cost of 500,000 rupees each, so that's about $4,500 per statue. The group coordinator, Pram Prihat Gurang, says because the Yeti is a mythical creature, there should be creative freedom. Our aim is to produce the Yeti as an emblem of peace, reconciliation and humanity, rather than a fear-creating feature, he tells the BBC. People around the world should not only know Nepal as the land of Everest or Lord Buddha or Gurkha, the Yeti can represent our uniqueness as well. I mean, that's a good aim.
Yeah, I think so.
Ang Chishiran Sherpa, the man responsible for the controversial design, is equally defiant. I did not make Yeti's sketch by reading any book, he explains. On the basis of stories that I heard in my childhood and having Lord Buddha at the back of my mind, I made the design. This is very funny. There was, however, at least one more practical reason behind his choice. Sherpa says he didn't make it furry as depicted in Yeti-related literature in order to make it easier to paint.
Okay. Are you allowed to do that? I mean, so it's pictured as like naked skinned.
It does look like a sumo wrestler rather than what we would regard as a monkey-like Yeti. They've taken a lot of artistic liberty and it's caused a massive controversy.
Is it wearing clothes?
So Ben asked, is it wearing clothes? I'm just showing him a picture of it.
That looks horrifying.
It does, it doesn't look like the peaceful creature they were aiming for. It doesn't look... if I saw it, I wouldn't go, there's a Yeti, would you?
He's sitting in that sort of Spider-Man about to jump pose.
Yeah, this one's bright red. I think they come in different colours, so you can paint them different colours.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if it was, like, not hairy... You've got obvious problems of depicting genitalia and things like that.
I think they've got around that problem by making it sit cross-legged.
Yes,
covering those regions.
But that doesn't look to me like an ape. No,
you can see why it caused controversy.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, that looks just like a horrifying monster.
Yeah. Other reviews are available.
Yeah. Not from me now.
Not from you. Should we move away from the folklore and look at more modern encounters and expeditions in search of the Yeti?
Let's.
Because when I dug into this, I got really obsessed. In the past, we've talked about that kind of golden age, the kind of 1800s of expeditions.
Yeah.
This is more a 20th century version, but it's still got some of that, I don't know, romance about it when I tell you about it. Let's start with how the Yeti became known as the Abominable Snowman.
That I would like to know.
So according to journalist Kevin Taylor, in 1921, the Mount Everest reconnaissance expedition, led by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Howard Berry, there's a lot of multiple-barreled names coming up in this segment. They found strange tracks at high altitude in the snow. Howard Berry assumed they were created by a large grey wolf. His Sherpa guides disagreed, saying that the tracks must have been created by the wild man of the snows, as they called it.
A dog-type foot and a human-type foot.
Very different.
Very different.
Yes. Well, they told journalists from the Calcutta Statesman they were the tracks of the Mensch Ganjni, meaning the filthy snowman. However, this was mistranslated in the article as the Abominable Snowman.
Oh.
And I guess the name just stuck from there on in.
And do they call it filthy because it smells bad? I mean, that is something that seems to go along.
Yeah, it's all I could find was more that the creature doesn't like the smell of us, not necessarily that we don't like the smell of him. I guess it's cold, so maybe smell isn't so much of an issue if you have a human encounter with a Yeti. But
I just feel like he might have been unnecessarily maligned by calling him filthy.
Filthy, yeah. Filthy snowman. It doesn't sound as good as the abominable.
Abominable.
That's the one. If I stumble, you're going to fill in for me.
I will. I'll be your abominable snowman fill-in word man.
Filthy snowman doesn't sound as appealing, does it?
No, it sounds like, I don't know, something Daffy Duck would shout at Bugs Bunny in a Christmas-themed cartoon. It doesn't...
Yeah.
I just feel that's a bit unfair on him. Anyway.
Well, it was basically a mistranslation, is why we get the name Abominable Snowman. Did I get that right?
You did.
Good.
Oh, well, I've definitely learned something. That's really good.
So the next significant encounter happened in 1948, and this time the men involved claimed they encountered the actual beast, not just its footprints. So two Norwegian prospectors, one called Age Tholberg and the aptly named Jan Frostis,
very good,
were searching for radioactive material on behalf of the Indian government in the Himalayas. They claim they started to follow strange footsteps in the snow and came face to face with not one, but two Yetis.
Goodness.
They attempted to catch the creatures with ropes. In the struggle that followed, Frostis was injured on the shoulder as the creatures tried to avoid capture. Eventually, the two men fired shots from their guns, scaring off the Yetis.
Well, don't scare them off.
Well, I guess they were in fear for their life at that point.
I suppose, yeah. Well, at least they didn't shoot them.
Yes, yeah. Well, there are reports that they did shoot it, but the more credible reports I've come across say it was more warning shots to get rid of it rather than...
They were, of course, stunned to see an ape-like creature with a pair of breasts over its shoulders.
Yeah, running off.
Running off, yes.
Yeah. Crossed legs, so it wasn't showing its genitalia.
Yeah. Wow, okay, so that's a proper full-on, that's a close encounter.
That's a proper close encounter, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. Let's look at probably the most famous image relating to the Yeti. I'm pretty sure most of you will have seen a black and white photo of a strange footprint in the snow with what looks like a pickaxe next to it.
Nice pic. Yes,
provided kind of just to provide scale. That's probably the most famous.
Yeah, banana for scale.
Yeti. Yes. So that iconic picture, we'll put that on our Patreon site, patreon.com/TQM pod, if you want to have a look at it. So this iconic picture was captured in 1951 as the British explorer Eric Earl Shipton was trekking at 19,000 feet, so that's about 5,800 metres, in the Himalayas. They spotted the 13-inch footprint, 33 centimetres, in the snow and photographed it. Now, there was a guy on the expedition called Tom Bourdillon, who was with Shipton, and he sent the photo to a friend and wrote a letter about the incident. The note says, "Dear Mick, here are the footprint photos. Sorry for the delay. We came across them on the high pass on the Nepal-Tibet watershed during the 1951 Everest expedition. They seem to have come over a secondary pass at about 19,500 feet down to 19,000 feet where we first saw them, and then went on down the glacier. We followed them for a better part of a mile. So even though there's only one photograph, they followed these tracks for a mile. What it is, I do not know, but I'm quite clear that it is no animal known to live in the Himalayas and that it is big. Compare the depth to which it and Mike Ward, someone on the expedition, brackets, no featherweight, has broken into the snow. I feel sorry for poor old Mike. He's getting...
Yeah, that's kind of old fatty.
Yeah. Yours, Tom Bourdillion. Fascinating letter. And in fact, the letter and the photo was sold by Christie's auction house in 2007 for £3,500.
I would have bought that if I had that money.
It's interesting to hear somebody write about it who was actually there, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, very credible.
Well, the 1951 expedition was not the last to come across strange footsteps in the snow. In 1953, Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary, while conquering Everest, also came across weird tracks. As you can imagine, Ben, the prospect there might be a giant snowman roaming the Himalayas captured the public and the media's attention.
Yes.
Which led to the Daily Mail newspaper in England to sponsor an expedition to Nepal to search for the snowman in 1954. The headline on the front page of the Daily Mail read, Daily Mail expedition will seek snowman. This is brilliant. So I'm just going to list who was on this expedition, because there are some... You know, I said where you go back to that romantic age of exploration. You'll see what I mean when I go through some of the people involved. So we have on the expedition Walter Morgan Gerald Russell, a leading naturalist and cryptozoologist. Dr. Biswamoy Biswas, curator at the mammal section at the Calcutta Museum. Tom Stobart, a pioneering cameraman and documentary producer. Mountaineer John Angelo, Jacko Jackson.
Oh, I wouldn't have known who it was if you hadn't said that. Yeah.
Animal photographer Stanley Jeeves. Anthropologist Charles Stoner. And reporter Ralph Izzard, who is said to have been a major inspiration for the fictional spy character James Bond.
Blimey, they weren't cutting any corners.
What a great line-up, right?
Yeah. Only missing Linda Lusardi for the... Yeah.
yeah. No, but she was running with them over
That's right, yes.
So this group's primary objective was to capture the small list of several kinds of Yetis reported to inhabit the Himalayas.
Oh, they were being very specific about which Yeti they want, right?
They were looking for the Tech Lama and they wanted to determine whether this rare and elusive creature was a legitimate missing link. So this is back to that search. Their further goal was to capture a male and female alive. So quite heady goals there, I think.
Yeah.
I guess if the Daily Mail are putting up a ton of money to go and find, that's what they want, isn't it? Well, sadly, Ben, they didn't achieve their primary goals. But they did photograph large, strange footprints in the snow, many of which could not be identified as belonging to any known animal. They also took shots of ancient paintings of the creature. They investigated scalps said to belong to the Yeti found in monasteries. Some of these scalps were over 300 years old. I love this bit. Locals gave them droppings said to be Yeti poo.
Lovely.
Do you think it's one of those? They go, yeah, just give them some poo. Yeah. Yeti poo, yeah, you carry that, yeah.
Nigel always could put it out in little spheres.
Yeah. They interviewed many locals on their travels, and the group found their testimony compelling and consistent. The expedition also had a number of successes outside of their main focus of the Yeti. The group collected over 100 species of plant and seeds, were the first to photograph many species of animals and birds of the region. And this is quite nice. The expedition's medical officer was instrumental in stamping out a smallpox outbreak in the Sherpa village of Nanshi Bazaar.
Goodness.
So they had an adventure.
They really did.
They didn't actually come across a Yeti, but they got more of these footprints.
But curing smallpox in a village along the way, it's
quite good, isn't it?
Yeah.
This I never knew, but in the years that followed, there was something akin to the Yeti equivalent of the space race. Kevin Taylor writes in an article. He says, the Russians soon joined the hunt for the man-bear of the Himalayas. In 1958, Russell, who had led the Daily Mail-funded expedition, was selected as deputy leader of the Slick Johnson Snowman expedition to Nepal. Texan oilman Tom Slick.
Oh, no.
Can you believe it? He rushed his plans to find the legendary snowman of the Himalayas in an effort to beat a Russian search party. We must hurry up because the Russians are sending out expeditions on a similar errand in Pamirs, Russell warned.
With Pamirs?
With Pamirs, I think it's a place.
Oh, right.
Not with Pamirs.
I wish I'd looked after my Yeti.
Because sometimes it gets real sweaty.
Nobody knows who Pamirs is now, don't they?
No, only me and you. Certainly none of our non-UK listeners will have a clue what we're talking about.
Target audience.
So anyway, they're having to rush because the Russians have got a similar expedition out. It was in the Pamir Mountains of Soviet Central Asia, an extension of the Himalayas, that a Soviet scientist reported seeing the snowman twice during the summer of 1957. Competition between the two most powerful nations in the world became uncompromising. It would seem that the Russians and Americans were running 3 races simultaneously during the Cold War: the space race, the nuclear arms race, and a race to find the Yeti of the Himalayas. Bizarre, right?
Yeah.
So it became important. The financial backing of Slick equipped the party with £5,000 of baggage, which was carried by 70 porters. So this is not some small little expedition they've got going. Russell was excited about the trek into the rugged mountains of eastern Nepal and the prospect of the search. Gerald and his 5-man team, which included Peter and Brian Byrne, who were big game hunters from Ireland, Captain Pushkar Shamsher, liaison officer appointed by the Nepalese government, and some 15 Darjeeling Sherpa porters. They left Biratnanga on February the 24th, 1958, to scour and trek the Aran River Valley in eastern Nepal until the end of May. Footprints of the snowman had been sighted in the area by Nepalese parties, and scalps were there to be examined. The sole object of the expedition is to film the creature, possibly in its natural environment, Russell said. During this expedition, Russell's guide, a Sherpa by the name of Attenborough, claimed to have seen a Teklamar in the middle of a creek in Sayong River Valley. Though Russell didn't see the creature himself, he was able to find its tracks on more than one occasion, so more footprints. One of the team commented, all evidence, including the 350-year-old scalp and skeleton hand of a Yeti at Pangbush Limar Seri, seemed to establish beyond a shadow of a doubt the existence of possibly 2 types of Yeti. A small species, which lives in the Himalayan rainforest between 8,000 and 12,000 feet, perhaps only 4.5 feet in height, and a larger animal of 6 to 8 feet in height in the higher regions between the villages and the glaciers. So they're talking about 2 different species of the Yeti.
And they come up with those ideas just basically based on tracks and...
Some of the scalps and the hands that they found. I mean,
and eyewitness accounts, I suppose.
I mean, I guess you could argue that kind of poison fruit thing. Are they making their theories fit what they've got rather than the other way around?
Yes. Yeah.
So Sam and Hillary, who I mentioned earlier, who saw those tracks on his quest for Everest, he later was part of a Yeti expedition in 1960. He concluded Yeti footprints were actually of fox or wolf tracks distorted as the snow melted. That was his theory.
I've heard this theory quite a bit. So the idea is that a small indentation on basically the main part of the paw, where that goes in, as the sun melts it, that expands.
Yeah.
And it appears to look like a human print.
It's also, I remember I visited a glacier once, and they were saying that if something like a leaf lands on the glacier, it creates this massive hole because it's doesn't reflect the light as much as the glacier does. So it just expands and creates this massive hole. So you could see a scenario where some dirty footprints could expand in the same way in the snow, possibly.
But you wouldn't... Well, I suppose, wouldn't you also see the same effect happen to, like, the toe pads? I don't know what they're technically called, but you know what I mean.
What, of the explorers?
Well,
I see. Yeah.
Of the fox or whatever.
Yeah. I think it's a strong possibility.
I suppose no one's actually done the test to see what it looks like.
Yeah,
if this happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's said on some of the expeditions they ruled out other animals, but I don't know the science of how they ruled it out. You know, back then it could have literally been, well, they're too big. It doesn't mean they've done a scientific explanation necessarily.
Yeah, okay.
Sir Edmund Hillary also believed that these scalps that were being found all over the place were actually the scalps of bears rather than yetis. He was quoted, Sir Edmund Hillary, as saying, "I'm inclined to think that the realm of mythology is where the Yeti rightly belongs." Now, interestingly, samples of DNA from some of these expeditions that were claimed to be from a Yeti were tested by the Royal Society of London in 2017, concluding they do most likely belong to a brown bear.
That's disappointing.
Yeah. Wasn't conclusive, but they seemed pretty confident. In the years that followed these pioneering expeditions, the Yeti, or the Abominable... can't say
Abominable.
Thank you, Snowman, has worked its way into our culture. I mean, comic books, films, literature.
Yeah.
And I guess it's captured the imagination of both adults and children alike. It first appeared on film in a Hammer horror, The Abominable Snowman, starring Peter Cushing in 1957. And, of course, we've had animated movies. I'm thinking of Smallfoot in 2018. You know, there was a raft of... It's like that, isn't it, Hollywood? Suddenly there was a raft of these missing link kind of snowmen type stuff. So it's still in our imagination. And it has sparked the imagination of many famous people as well, including one of my all-time favourite actors, Jimmy Stewart. He joined one of the Himalayan expeditions funded by the oil man Tom Slick.
Did he really?
He did. Wow. Can't imagine that, can you? Can you imagine? You've got Jake... You know what I mean? It's back to that romance of it all.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That is extraordinary. And I presume that expedition saw nothing.
No, probably some footprints. They always seem to find footprints.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned last week on our Patreon exclusive episode that one of our British national treasures, Brian Blessed, also has a fascination for the creature.
Yes.
Now, for those of you who don't know about Brian Blessed, the actor, I mean, he's probably best known for appearing in the movie adaptation of Flash Gordon. Would that be fair? I'm probably doing him injustice.
No, I think so. I think that's right, yeah.
And his incredible booming voice.
You do a good Blessed.
Yeah, I was just done my throat in, though. Let's have a listen to the real voice of Brian Blessed. He was talking about his fascination with the Yeti on the BBC. Have a listen.
I think it is called Sasquatch Bigfoot in Canada, and in Russia it's called the Almas giant, or the Yeti, Sukpa, or Metama. Then in China they have their own hairy men, and it's Sukpa, Metama out there as well, Yeti. And then in Sumatra it's called Orang Pendek, or upright man, not meaning an orangutan. There is no doubt at all that Yetis obviously do exist. There are great parts of the world that we don't know about. I mean, when I was in Mongolia, the Mongols are telling me that frequently in the late autumn that you get migrations of dozens and dozens and dozens of Almas giants, and they see them in the distance. So I want to go out there one day and go to northern Mongolia and just go, oh! And then I think that might scare them off.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, Ben, the man is a legend, isn't he? And what a voice.
That's a great voice. But, you know, a man whose job is to portray fantastical characters,
Yeah.
I can imagine he would feel at home with a Yeti.
He's also written a semi-autobiographical part fiction book about the creature.
Has he?
Yes, called Search of the Yeti.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
It chronicles the actors' and adventurers' thrilling quest to find the elusive creature in the Himalayas, blending personal anecdotes with historical context. Blessed shares insight into the cultures and landscapes of the region. He recounts his experiences with local guides, the challenges of high-altitude trekking, and the myths surrounding the Yeti. And I think he's read, what's the word? He's included some fictional elements in that as well. I've not read the book, but it does look interesting.
I wonder if he's seen any footprints or...
Yeah, I couldn't find any evidence that he has, but he's a firm believer that something is going on.
I mean, he's invested a lot of his own money into it. So.
Yeah. Now, after the wave of expeditions in the 1950s and 60s, I guess the search for and evidence of the Yeti has seemed to diminish a bit. I mean, you could say that's because it doesn't exist, but outside of that, I wondered if it was because fewer people have been searching for it. You think in the 50s, 60s, there's all these expeditions there. That, I don't know, if anyone's seen those queues of mountaineers waiting to scale the top of Mount Everest, you could see it might have just scared the creature off.
Totally, yeah. I mean, that's crazy, those queues.
Yeah.
It looks like Oxford Street at Christmas.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And perhaps maybe it's just died out. Who knows? There have been some credible modern-day sightings, including this one detailed in the Guardian newspaper in 2000, titled Yeti Hunter. Sam Wollaston writes, climber Reinhold Messner dismissed the Yeti myth. Then he saw one and spent years chasing them around the Himalayas. Now he thinks he has solved the mystery. There was a lean forward. Reinhold Messner bumped into his first Yeti somewhere in Tibet. It was 1986.
It's you.
He'd gone out for a walk on his own and got a bit lost. You don't want to get lost in that environment, do you?
Bad news.
It was dusk. He was climbing a steep, densely vegetated slope. Suddenly, something large and dark stepped out ahead of him. He watched it racing along in front, flitting in and out of the trees.
Breasts flying over the shoulders.
Yeah. Upright like a man, but moving faster than any man could. Neither branches nor ditches slowed it down. At one point, it stood motionless only 10 yards away, then disappeared. He saw it again later that night, running in the moonlight. That's such an image, isn't it?
Yeah.
Seeing a Yeti running in the moonlight.
As you hold your partner's hand, squeeze them, look at the running Yetis.
Yeah. It looked more than 7 feet tall and immensely strong, but agile too. Covered in hair, with short legs and long, powerful arms, it made angry hissing noises, and for a second he saw its eyes and teeth before it ran off into the trees.
Angry hissing noises?
Yeah. After his encounter with the strange beast, Messner became obsessed. He spent a large part of the following 12 years chasing Yeti around the Himalayas, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, India, Mongolia, and Kazakhstan.
The same Yeti?
Yeah. Trying to get to the bottom of the myth that has been around since Alexander the Great heard of them when he went to conquer the Indus Valley in 326 BC. Now he thinks he's solved the mystery. This is the guy who saw the Yeti, not
what does he think it is?
Alexander the Great. He's written a book about it. Now, just to give you some context, the article says, if you know anything about climbing, you will have heard of Messner. He's quite an amazing character. The German-speaking Tyrolean Italian is probably the greatest mountaineer alive. He was the first man to climb all 14 of the 8,000-metre mountains, a feat impressive in itself, but more so because he did it without oxygen.
Ooh.
Wow, so he climbed 14 mountains over 8,000 metres without oxygen. Before 86, I wrote in my book, the Yeti is BS, Messner says. But then, when I have seen this big animal, which I could not see exactly what it was, I understood that it was exactly matching with the legend. After 12 years of research and more than 20 trips to the Himalayas, scouring monasteries for relics, and eventually seeing more Yetis for himself, Messner's conclusion, and I agree with the person writing the article, is a little disappointing. He says, the Yeti does not exist.
Oh, what?
There is no human-like abominable snowman living in the mountains. The Yeti is in fact a Himalayan brown bear. In the end, I thought to myself, how could I need 12 years to come to the answer? It's so obvious, he says. Is he not disappointed, he's asked. Not for me, because the brown bear is really a monster. In the local areas, they know all that this is an animal. But since only every 10 years someone is seeing a real example, so if they speak about it, all the children and normal people that never saw one, they are imagining that they are talking about something that isn't a brown bear. We should see the Yeti as the sum of the legend of a zoological reality. I mean, I have issues with he describes it running on two legs. Now, I know bears do stand on two legs, but I'm not sure they run great distances on two legs. I'm no expert.
That's what I was about to say. And do they really hiss and are they 7 foot tall? And do they run on their hind legs? So these are all things which I don't...
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm no naturalist. I prefer to keep my clothes on. But it just... I don't know. Is he just doing this to make himself feel better? Like, fine, it's a bear, I've given up.
Yeah.
Well, I've not given up, but I don't want to hear any more about it. It's just a bear. Shut up. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and maybe it does kind of help the book. Well, maybe it doesn't help the book. Probably would have helped the book if you'd have said, no, I think there's something going on.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say. He's like, well, it's an ape that's descended from this branch or whatever. Damn it. I don't want it to be a bear.
I guess there is some brown bear evidence to it, that the scalp's a brown bear, that it is the right size, it could be seen on its hind legs. So I get there's some credibility in that argument. There are bits of his account, like I said, of it running fast on two legs. I don't know enough about bears.
But here's the thing, if that scalp was a bear, if you're close enough to this thing to take a scalp off it, you're going to know it's a bear.
Yeah. Well, these are hundreds of years old scalps, but
even so, they was found at a monastery.
Yeah, but again, it's like with a lot of these legends, that could almost the scalp thing could be a complete red herring, couldn't it? In a way, you know what I mean?
I don't think you get fish that far.
Yeah. Well, that's what they were searching for, red herrings. Yeah.
But all I'm saying is, if you are in a monastery and one of your fellow monks sees a bear and decides to scalp it, they're going to say, that's the scalp of a bear, because I just saw a bear. They're not going to go, oh, it was a hairy man.
Unless you're going to sell it to, locals as, I've got the scalp of a Yeti.
But they're holy men. Would they do that?
Maybe they acquired it. They didn't actually get the scalp. You know what I mean?
I suppose so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But... I think it's possible that it could be a red herring, as we say.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, Messner is convinced that the Yeti is not a cryptid, but a brown bear that is rarely seen.
Yeah, I don't want to hear any more about that. I want it to be real.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of hope. Normally at this point in the podcast, Ben, we often, when we're talking about cryptids, say, I wonder what Sir David Attenborough would make of it all.
Yeah, we do, yeah.
Well, thanks to Luke, our zoologist, he put me on to an interview with, I guess, what would you call him, the most famous naturalist on the planet?
I would say so.
Isn't he? Certainly one of the most respected. He talks about the Yeti and other cryptids. Have a listen to this.
Where do you stand on undiscovered animals of the sort that we're excited about, but perhaps on there? I believe the study of it is called cryptozoology. I don't know whether it's an actual science or kind of made up thing. The Yeti, the Abominable Snowman, Sasquatch, the Bigfoot thing, the Loch Ness Monster. Do you think there's those sort of things are out there that we haven't found?
I don't think there's a Loch Ness Monster because if there was one, there would have to be two or three.
Yeah,
There'd have to be a family. And if it was an ichthyosaur or something, an air-breathing creature, it would be coming up all the time. So I don't think that. But I am absolutely baffled by the Abominable Snowman, which is also called the Yeti or the Sasquatch, because very, very convincing footprints have been found. Yeah. What made them? And I'm talking particularly about Abominable Snowman, which have had footprints at 19,000 feet. Nobody goes up to 19,000 feet just to make a joke.
Certainly not barefoot.
No, certainly not barefoot.
Flip-flops on at the very least, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's right. So I think there's an unanswered problem there.
Wow, so there probably is. You think there might well be? Oh, that's exciting.
So there you have it. That was Sir David Attenborough and the Jonathan Ross show, seeming to indicate that the Yeti might be a thing, or at least a credible mystery.
Yeah, he's not writing it off there.
I mean, he was very sceptical about the Loch Ness Monster, but the Yeti was the one. I wasn't expecting that from him.
No, I wasn't, because you would think that someone with his reputation... I mean, his reputation is so large, he's not going to damage it through that.
Yeah.
But for him to say, it's possibly credible... I mean, my instinct would have been that he would have gone straight to, oh, well, of course, people see bears and they mistake them and blah, 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 blah. But, no, that's good. Okay. I'm happier again now. It might exist. The real problem, though, is, if... I know Jonathan Ross probably just wanted that answer and then he could move on, but I would have said, how is it that we haven't been able to...
Yeah.
To find it then, if there is a distinct possibility of it.
It's interesting because I was thinking about that there was that scene in Planet Earth where snow leopards in the Himalayas are incredibly rare, and Planet Earth managed to capture them in their natural habitat. And I think it was the first time that they were ever filmed in their natural habitat.
Yes, I remember because there was a post-documentary about the cameraman that did it.
Yeah.
That was amazing because they hide. There's that scene where it's hiding on the red rocks.
Yes.
And you'd think that a snow leopard wouldn't be invisible, but it is completely invisible.
So if you think about it, I know that's an animal we know exists, but, to have it only really captured a few years ago on film.
That's true.
It is a remote, massive area, especially high in the mountains. So placed there, there must be, there's so much of it that I guess humans have never even visited.
And captured for the first time where it demonstrates how it can blend into its surroundings so well.
Yeah.
So perhaps that is something that these things can do as well.
Yeah.
I love that, by the way, that any animal that lives up there, it's always called a snow something. Snow rabbit, snow hare, snow leopard,
man.
Snow fox, snow man, anything.
Yeah.
If it's white, just put snow in front of it. Up it goes.
Snow hare.
Yes, snow hares are lovely, aren't they?
Although there is the blue poppy, so it's different for plants.
Oh, yeah. The snow poppy doesn't work.
Oh, yeah, well... Now, there is another thread that I wanted to pull on, because we have previously talked about potential connections between Bigfoot and UFO activity.
That is something that I find fascinating. The sort of... Sometimes they appear to be getting in or out of a UFO. They're seen in the same area. We've spoken about reports where, glowing orbs turn into Yetis.
Yeah.
Well, Bigfoot, I suppose. With Yeti, I'm getting the terms wrong. Yeti is in the Himalayas. Bigfoot, largely America. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Big feet getting in and out of UFOs. Yes.
And again, back to that point we mentioned earlier, there are people who believe they're related. There are people who say, no, it's just a completely separate thing. But back to the UFOs, I thought I'd investigate to see if there were any parallels between the Yeti and Bigfoot and UFOs. Now, there are some credible reported sightings of UFOs in the region. I'm just going to list off a couple of them. The Ladakh sightings. In the early 2000s, locals and tourists in Ladakh reported seeing strange lights in the sky. Some described them as moving erratically, unlike conventional aircraft. There was the Sikkim incidents. In Sikkim, there have been anecdotal reports of UFOs, particularly near high-altitude lakes and monasteries. Locals sometimes associate these sightings having spiritual significance. I guess you would if you saw that. Mount Kailash, It's a sacred mountain, has been a focal point for many UFO enthusiasts who claim that strange phenomena occur around it, including lights and unusual aircraft. I did a little bit of looking into that. It's different, but it reminded me a little bit of Skinwalker Ranch, where there's that kind of weirdness that goes around those locations. There have been military encounters, accounts of Indian military personnel witnessing unidentified flying objects during patrols in remote areas of the Himalayas. Now, because these UFO sightings often overlap with areas of Yeti sightings and footprints, it has fueled some speculation about a connection in the same way it has with Bigfoot. Whether that's being driven by the association with Bigfoot or not, it's hard to separate out, you know. I was just, it's not a thread that I've seen written about too much, but I just wanted to see, are there reports of UFO sightings? I guess if you research UFO sightings anywhere in the world, you're going to find what you want. Yeah. So I'm a little cautious about saying there is a link between
Okay. I mean, there are other things which put it into the category of high strangeness, like, say, the Oz effect happens, so people say, or when they see it, you know, all the noises stop, or...
Well, the other bit about the Yeti, which I think could fit into that narrative, is reports of it, or I guess more folklore legend of it being able to become invisible and disappear. That would... You could make a narrative that connects that with UFOs.
You could, but that's why I was talking about the snow leopard's ability to hide. That's what...
Yeah, so even natural camouflage rather than anything technological.
It just disappeared. It just learned how to sit behind a rock and look like it wasn't there.
Yeah. Well, I was really curious as to what our resident zoologist Luke had to say about the legend of the Yeti. And he had an interesting take. So let's close with that, if that makes sense. Now, Luke talked about a particular type of primate called the snub-nosed monkey, also known as the snub-nosed langur.
I think I know what they look like. They're really cute.
I'm going to show you one in a minute.
Oh, yeah, okay.
This primate is found primarily in the mountainous regions of China, Myanmar, and the Himalayas. They have a unique, flat, upturned nose, which gives them their name. Their fur can vary in colour, often featuring shades of yellow, orange or black, depending on the species. They typically inhabit temperate forests and known for living at high altitudes. Now, they have quite a strange appearance, particularly the face and specifically the nose, which gives them their name. I'm just going to show Ben a picture of one.
Oh, wow. That's weird. It looks like it's wearing lipstick, makeup.
Yeah.
Quite human-like.
Very human-like, but with that weird nose. I mean, when I looked at the nose, it's more like a couple of slits rather than a proper nose. A bit like, I guess, Lord Voldemort in Harry Potter. You know, he's got almost those reptilian-like... These don't look reptilian, but effectively he's got no nose, this...
How does your Yeti smell?
Yeah, this monkey, it's just got these slits. And it's like that, Luke was telling me, because it lives at such high altitude and the cold temperatures, and it doesn't hibernate in the winter. If it had a normal nose, it would be frostbitten and fall off.
Right.
So it's developed this kind of slit-like nose to survive in that environment. So given their strange appearance, the high altitudes they live at, and the fact they have relatively large feet compared to their body, Luke and others think they could be a good contender for the legend of the Yeti. Now, the problem with this theory is the size of the animal. It grows to the height of a human leg. Yeah.
So 2.5 feet, something like that.
Yeah, probably 2 to 4 feet, maybe. Yeah,
that's a long leg. But yes, I see where you're going.
Whereas the beast that's described,
7 foot,
7-8 foot. But it made me think about the reports we featured earlier today, talking about 2 types of Yeti, the large beast and the smaller one. So I wondered, could the folklore have started with the snub-nosed monkey, the smaller one that everyone's been searching for, or some people have been searching for, and then been exaggerated into the huge beast that is often described.
Yeah, or maybe the huge beast is the bear, and the smaller one is the monkey.
And the monkey gives legend. Because, looking at that picture, even a kind of 3 or 4 foot thing in the snow at high altitude, coming across that thing,
it would be scary
at a distance with, in difficult conditions, it would freak you out.
Yeah, it would.
It?
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting from Luke. Really interesting.
Thanks, Luke. I'd never heard that before. That's a good take.
So, in summary, I think after my journey researching the Yeti, I've been left thinking, for me, it's probably more compelling and a credible possibility of a cryptid than Bigfoot for me.
Right, okay.
The reasons being, it's given its remoteness, the harsh conditions of the Himalayas, the fact that they're example of what are known as living fossils that was mentioned earlier, so creatures that have been around for millions of years who've changed very little, and some of the evidence that has been captured. I mean, even David Attenborough's intrigued. So my problem with it compared to Bigfoot is relatively, it's a small area that lots of people are focusing on trying to find Bigfoot. It's not as inhospitable and remote a location as the Himalayas, as we talked about the snow leopards earlier. So for me, I think there's more potential of a Yeti than a Bigfoot is where I landed after researching it.
Okay, I mean, I'll go along with that. I want it to be real.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's such a romantic sort of thought that
I think it's more romantic than the Bigfoot as well.
Yeah, I think so too.
And maybe it's because of all those. I think the romance of it has really struck me researching this. Those fabulous expeditions with Jimmy Stewart, with Jimmy Stewart and a guy, an oil man called Slick, and the quadruple barrel names British explorers. And, I mean, it's brilliant.
It is. It's very. There's a pioneering spirit.
Yeah.
One of them was called Jeeves. Say, Jeeves, let's go and find ourselves a monkey man.
Yes. We need a cup of tea first.
Oh, yes.
And then you got Brian Blessed, who's kind of doing it, and Sir David Attenborough intrigued.
I'm going to read that book. Definitely going to read that book.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. My next door neighbour has a Skoda Yeti. That's
right. The lesser spotted Skoda Yeti.
Yeah, it's a very good car.
Is it white?
No, it's silver, but every time I see it, I think, Yeti. People, it's got such a reputation that someone made a car out of it.
Is a Yeti a small one?
The Skoda? It's like
big?
A 4x4 type thing.
Okay, so it's big. Yeah,
well, it's big, it's a small 4x4. Yeah. But it's interesting that, like, not many people talk about... There are lots of people talk about the Yeti, lots of people talk about Bigfoot, and I suppose I'm guilty of intertwining the two, using the same name for the two. But not many people talk about the Australian, the Yowie.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, I think that we should probably visit the Yowie at some point.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because, there's Aboriginal law there to go along with that.
Yeah.
And I know very little about that. I didn't know quite a lot of what you've said. So I wonder if it compares...
That's interesting.
...to the Yowie legends.
Is that the sound a Yeti makes when it stubs its toe?
Yowie! Do you remember... They made them for a brief while, Cadbury's Yowies. They were delicious. Oh. They had, they were milk chocolate, and they were all like different Yowie characters, all the same shape.
Right.
And inside were, I think it was like tiny, not Smarties because they're Nestle, but there was like little sweets inside. They used them when I was at university. I used to get one for a particular lecture. I'd always eat a Yowie.
Yeah.
They were excellent with Yowies. But
you sure it wasn't Yeti poo inside?
No.
I love that thought of the locals. We've got Yeti poo for you.
Yeah, I do love scat. That's why, werewolf scat would be top of my list for scat I would like to encounter.
It's a strange list to have, isn't it?
Or crypto scat. Yeah. Well, let us ponder on the Yeti and let us look forward to thinking and talking more about the Yowie. But Yeah, that was good. I'm fascinated by what those monks have in their scalps, in their collection of scalps. Yeah, okay.
Cool.
Well, I'm going to go off to read Brian Blattin's book now and probably have quite a long lie down, I think.
Well, we've got the extra scoop to do.
Yeah, I'll do it lying down.
Okay, fair enough. And if you want to join us for Ben and Peter's extra scoop, which is exclusive on Patreon, come to patreon.com/TQM pod and join us there.
And if you do it now, if you could bring me like a McDonald's selection of burgers and a large lemonade, that'd be brilliant, thanks.
Or a sausage and egg McMuffin, that's always a good hangout.
Oh, yeah, 2 of those.
Yeah, cool. We'll see you there.
All right, see you over there. Bye-bye.
Are you the quantum mechanics?